This weekend, the age-old rivalry of the USA versus Europe. I never really understood that either, but I also get really passionate about it when it's kind of brought up and becomes relevant. That old chestnut continues with the 44th Ryder Cup beginning this Friday from Marco Simone Golf Club in Rome. We're going to discuss that now, and we've got, of course, my old Paddy's New Yacht and Low Blows colleague who has gone on to much bigger and better things now with the Irish Examiner, David Kent, aka Kento, on the line to discuss. If you're wondering, by the way, why we're not discussing Ireland South Africa, because obviously last time we were discussing the Rugby World Cup, we are taping this before that happens, even though you'll hear it afterwards, because Kento is off to see Busted in Manchester this weekend. So we have to make we have to make sure that happens as well. But we will discuss the Ryder Cup and do our best to kind of give you a preview on it. And the USA, again, Kento, are walking in favourites after a dominant 2021 win in Whistling Straits. I guess the big question that everyone is asking is, can Europe crash the wedding here?
It is funny you mentioned the intro. It's like it's the Ryder Cup, so like it's in the overall grand like sporting contest. It only happens once every 2 years. It's not that big, but I'm the exact same as you. When it comes around, I'm like, yeah, come on, Europe, get in there, my son. Um, they deservedly walk in as favourites, I think, from me, because and it just this simply comes down to the strength of the teams. Now, you could argue that possibly two of them fluked it, but of the four major holders in golf, three of them are lining out for the US this week. They also have Scotty Scheffler, who is this incredible turnaround from the 2021 tournament where it was like, really, Scotty Scheffler? And now it's like, okay, Scotty Scheffler, first name on the sheet.
Yeah,
Absolutely, by a considerable distance, one of the best, like, I'd argue the best player in the world. Could trip up on his putting, but that'll be something that we'll see later on in the week as it progresses. But I think based off how dominant they were, I mean, poor Patrick Harrington is scarred forever by the 2021 Ryder Cup. I think they deserve to go in. Now, you look at last weekend, and you look at the BMW PGA, Team Europe, a lot of them did a lot better, and they played better golf than the US counterparts, but it is the Ryder Cup. It is very much an outlier in terms of, we've seen over the years in terms of form. Everyone remembers, if any golf fans remember the miracle at Medina, where suddenly Ian Poulter became the best golfer of all time for one weekend.
it's great.
And cemented, like, going into that tournament, everyone was like, whoever's going to be talking about Ian Poulter. Same as Darren Clark at the in 06, same as Paul McGinley 4 years before that. There's always just a couple of golfers where it's like, yeah, it's the Ryder Cup. That's what happens.
Yeah, and it's great, and we love it. And again, form does go out the window, like you're seeing. Yeah, Ian Poulter, Sergio Garcia, people who again will go missing traditionally in the big majors. So again, like quoting the fact that there's major winners there, is one thing, but at the same time, it tends to be a beast unto itself. And again, the fact that Europe have like home field advantage essentially with it taking place in Rome, that's going to play in. The fact that Americans playing at a different kind of time scale to what they normally be on, having to make the journey, that's going to play a factor. Again, just the crowd has such a huge impact on it a lot of the time that again, these are the kind of variables that you can't really plan for. It makes it tough for us to preview, but we do like to have discussions around it. And I think one discussion point is we've previously, and it's been a recurrent trend, but it's kind of the age of captains is skewing younger than it normally was. Usually a Ryder Cup captain will be someone in the autumn of their career. But again, we've got two very relevant players and two new first-time captains in Luke Donald, who of course stepped in for Henrik Stenson after the latter joined Live Golf, which awkwardly enough isn't a problem anymore. But like, yeah, there you go. And we have Zach Johnson as well. They're very unfamiliar in this pattern. They're essentially, you're looking at it and you're like, who's David when it comes to those guys? But is there any advantage either way there?
I don't particularly think so, and it's just because it's as you mentioned, that they're still relative, like they're younger than a couple of the players that are actually that would have been in contention. I think they're probably young. I think Liv Donald certainly is younger than one or two of them that are actually there. And you've seen in the past, like Tom Watson is always my favorite example for a Ryder Cup captain, because I think he's somebody he did it 3 times. So it's like, yeah, he was old first, then he was old again, and then suddenly he was even older. Davis Love the third is another good example for it, but also you could see them as kind of leaders because they've been around the block. Not that Luke Donald and Zach Johnson haven't, but I don't know whether either of them would be. You'd look up towards them and you think team leader as their first quality at this stage. 10 years down the line, maybe, because who knows what they'll win then. Like even Henrik Stenson would have been one where you're thinking, yeah, okay, you could see him being a team captain and making these kind of picks. Again, I go back to Medina and Jose Orlando. I can never say that fella's name. Everyone
Like,
knows who it is.
Jose Maria. Oh, that's not. Yeah, no. I thought I had it for a second and then I didn't.
Yeah, like he proved himself as one of the greatest captains of all time because of just how he structured that that comeback. But again, could I see Luke Donald or Zach Johnson in that situation? Probably not, but I could be open to be corrected on that. I just don't see them as that kind of material, so therefore I don't see either of them having a particular advantage. You mentioned the home, you mentioned the crowd. US haven't won in Europe since before I was born, and I'm not 30 yet. So, like 93 in the Belfry was the last time they managed. So that's actually a big. I've noticed that is a big point for them. That they've been talking about, even all the golf networks over there saying similar, and all the golf cons. So like, we need a win on European soil because it's kind of like how Everton never won in Anfield until COVID, where it's like, yeah, Brad, you win in Goodison Park, we'll win on our turf. So go and do the job away from home, like.
Interesting. And again, like when you look at kind of the names that the captains have picked and how it's shaping out, you mentioned there the US are like a murderer's row. You've got Scotty Scheffler, like you said, the world number one, Wyndham Clark, the US Open winner, Brian Harman, the Open winner, Patrick Cantlay, Max Homer, Xander Schauffele, then the wildcards look somehow even more ominous than the people who qualified. Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns, Ricky Fowler, Justin Thomas. On the European side, a lot of our hopes, not gonna lie, John Ram and then Rory McIlroy. Essentially, that's where it kind of stands in terms of that. Now, the good news is Rory has the bit between his teeth. He has determination. He's got Shane Lowry, his tag team partner, there as well. I'm sure we're going to see them team up throughout the weekend. You've got Victor Hovland as well, would be a bigger name. You also have kind of lesser known names to kind of, especially the more casual fans like Robert McIntyre, Tyrrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, and then the wildcards. You've got some more recognizable names like Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Rose, Seep Straka, Nikolai Højgaard and Ludwig Aberg, again kind of more new names to the more casual fans. There's a definite advantage in terms of the recognition for the USA, but that has typically been the case in this. The PGA is just the higher profile tour than the European tour, but Europe have used teamwork and kind of a lot of the more traditional qualities that we're speaking of in terms of that only come into play in the Ryder Cup, and they've won 7 of the last 10. So again, Europe are the form dogs, even if they're not coming in the reigning champions. A lot of young guns in the lineup, so they will have to kind of rest on that team spirit. Will the young guns be able to show, though, that that's what they go to school for?
What a reference, sir. I think what is this? There's 4 people on the European squad who haven't been in a Ryder Cup before. McIntyre's one, Sepp Straka, and it was a Højgaard Neighbour. The rest have all been there. Justin Rose is definitely not someone who's young and knows who busted are. But again, one of the more experienced players there has done it in the Ryder Cup before. So, like, the pairings will be very, very interesting in the 4 balls and the foursome, and this is where Donald will look like. Obviously, day one, you kind of have to guess. Well, the US less so because they have a couple of pairings from the last Ryder Cup where they won quite easily that they could easily put together again. Patrick Cantlay, like if he starts on Saturday or on Friday at 7:15, we'll still be there Saturday at 9:15 with him playing with anyone, but he gets the job done at the Ryder Cup. An interesting one there for me is Spieth as a wild card. Good in terms of team play, has only ever earned half a point in 4 Ryder Cups in the singles on the Sunday. So that is all on him. Again, still could be argued as young, but like when you're looking at Europe, yeah, McIlroy mid-30s, Ram still under 30 technically. I'm going to claim that as young. He's a year older than me. I'm claiming that as young. McIntyre is the same age as me, definitely young. But yeah, you're like Hovland, Højgaard, Aberg as well. Like lads who will probably relish this opportunity. It's their first Ryder Cup. They don't know if they're going to be there in 4 years' time, or in 2 years' time, I should say. So like if it's their one chance, well, you know what, balls to the wall, go for it. Why not? What have you got to lose? Particularly in the singles, but yeah, it'll come down to Donald, how much Donald will listen to the likes of McIlroy and Rose, and even Tyrrell Hatton, like someone like people players who want to fight, will they want to play specifically with another partner? Like again, if they go out and smash the lights out on the Friday, they're also going to want to stick around with them on the Saturday four balls. So, but you don't want to overuse anyone either. So it all again, it all comes down to that captaincy issue. Like you could even put Hoiberg and Aberg together for the Open and see what happens, because like it is worth the kind of chess game that we see at the start of the tournament, at least, where he's still working the kinks out and everything. So it'll be an interesting when the four balls get released. It's on the Thursday night, isn't it? The night before that they get published for the Friday morning. So that'll be a really, really interesting one to read into.
Okay, amazing stuff. There's two different types of players that we have in the Ryder Cup. Like you have your Sergio Garcia or Ian Poulter types, you know, the kind of Thunderbirds or Go types to watch out for, where they're kind of just step up and they become a different type of player and be the difference in their team. And then you've got the kind of Tiger Woods kind of loser kids type who just they just can't get the points done when it comes to the Ryder Cup. They just don't care. They just don't have that same hatred in their heart for the continent of Europe or the United States if you're on the European side, and it just doesn't come together despite their name value. Who do you think is going to be the surprise who actually, you know, steps up and makes a name for themselves? And who do you think, is there anyone who's going to flatter to deceive? There may be one of the bigger names that's going to let the side down come the end of the weekend. Without tipping your hat to who you think is going to win, because we will discuss that.
I think, and it's kind of how I mentioned it in my intro. I don't know if Wyndham Clark and Brian Harman would be in the Ryder Cup if they hadn't won the majors. Now, obviously, money-wise, they wouldn't be, but in terms of captain's picks or rankings, like Keegan Bradley isn't there, Cameron Young isn't there, and I'd argue that they would easily have more. Well, for me anyway, have more of an upside than Wyndham and Brian Harman. Now, it's going to age terribly when Wyndham and Brian Harman steer the US to victory next weekend, but that's beside the point. Like in terms of stepping up, you're like Scheffler just missed the consistency. Xander Schauffele loves the Ryder Cup as well. Can't lay similar. I'm looking at Ricky Fowler here as kind of an outlier for the US go, and someone who we've seen, and I think he's suddenly turned into everyone's second favorite player. Where it's like, if the player that I backed or that I support doesn't win this tournament, I just really, really want it to be Ricky Fowler, because he's just one of like, he's a nice guy. His golf game is unbelievable. He's so likable.
Yeah.
So if it's not a major, I can see him kind of grabbing it and just going, right, this is mine. From a European side, as much as I'd like it to be Shane Lowry, I have it as Sepp Straka.
Nice.
In his first Ryder Cup. He's just one of them that is like, it seems that it'll suit him. The course will suit him. Now, don't get me wrong. The course in Rome, what's it called again? The Marco Simone, isn't it?
Marco Simone, yeah.
Host the Italian Open. Two of the last three Italian Opens, one by Robert McIntyre and one by Nicholas Højgaard. So they know the course and they like the course. So we could be looking at Højgaard as the 22-year-old sensation that goes, yeah, you know what, I won here in 2021, I think it was. And then McIntyre won it in 2022. So there's their options there as people who come. My money's on Straka for that, though. Okay. I think he's just got the game and game the mental strength really to kind of just take any pressure, because you know there's going to be American fans there screaming mashed potato, screaming irrelevant, inane stuff at golfers, because that's what they do. You know, they pay the money, they're allowed to, I suppose. But yeah, he could starting to take that. He'll keep the head down, he'll keep swinging. He won't get bothered by a drop shot here and there, or how either of the two opponents are playing. But yeah, there's so many options for breakouts. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that's when you look at it, it's like it could be one of so many different people, because again, there's so many people we haven't seen already, but that are entering really exciting periods of their career and will be relishing the opportunity here. So really exciting time. So Kendo, you knew this was coming. It had to be. I know we're a week out of this, but I need to know right now. I don't need to know like kind of in hindsight. Don't need to know in the year 3000. I want to know right now where you're standing. I'm going to put you on the spot. Who have you got for this weekend? What are you expecting to see?
Home advantage. Mentioned it over and over and over again. Now 30 years since the US won on Europe. Is this the best US team that they've taken to try and win in that period? No. And better teams ahead of this team couldn't get the job done. I think you have McIlroy and Ram. I'd put them as ahead of Scheffler and Koepka, who I think are the best players on the US team. If you put them in a four ball and give me Ram and McIlroy to just drive this team to grab it by the golf balls and just steer them to victory. I don't know if it'll be as comfortable as in previous years. And I don't think it'll be anywhere near as comfortable as the 19-9 that the US won at Whistling Straits 2 years ago. But give me Europe, I think, on this time. I think the US are going to eventually take one in Europe in the next kind of 4, 6, 8 years. Just not this one.
Okay, interesting. I'm thinking very similar. I'm also willing to kind of put it, like, I'd put money on it being a close one. Consider the Miracle in Medina was the last absolute classic that we had. And that's 2012. So we are due a classic. And I think everything is lining up where you'd say the US are favorites, and in terms of like a dramatic comeback or a really close affair, where we run it right until the end, I'd say if you can give me Europe with kind of an underdog handicap, I take the over on them. Definitely, I'd feel confident with that, but I'd say it's also going to be a close run affair. So really exciting times. Kento, thank you for joining us as always on Page 180. Enjoy Busted. Look, very excited for you, and yeah, we'll check in ASAP. We've got loads to discuss. The Rugby World Cup's ongoing, NFL's ongoing. This is peak us season, so yeah, I'm sure you'll be back on Page 180. Thanks for joining us.
Well, like I have to do it an air hostess now at the weekend, so it's not gonna be too ideal. But
amazing stuff. Thank you, Kento, for joining us. Anyway, guys, let's get on with some 60-second movie reviews.